Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to Lincoln Ware Live. We're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11. And we've got a great show for you today, as usual. My first guest, Dr. Doug Pentz, a psychologist. We'll talk about adult attention deficit disorder. You adults out there that suffer from attention deficit disorder. I guess these are the people that slip through the cracks. Second half of the show, we've got President of the NAACP, Christopher Smitherman, will be my guest. And he's been on TV more this week than the past three presidents of the NAACP were on their entire tenure as president. Unbelievable. We'll talk about some of the last week's events as far as LaVon Smith, who was released from jail. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll talk about the upcoming NAACP Freedom Fund dinner that will take place in the next few weeks. And we'll talk to him about that coming up on the second half of the show. And we'll give you a chance to talk to Christopher Smitherman also, so stick around for that. But right now, let's talk about adult attention deficit disorder. Dr. Doug Pentz, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, sometimes I think I suffer from adult attention deficit disorder. What are the symptoms of that?
Well, a lot of people feel like they may suffer from ADD, but not everybody does. But the classic symptoms are problems with inattention, focus, organization, losing, forgetting things, and distractibility, the key. How easily distracted are you, and how often are you distracted?
That sounds like me.
Well, everybody is those things. I mean, you can also be hyperactive and impulsive. There are lots of symptoms of hyperactivity,
that's me
restlessness, impulsivity. The key is how long have you had these difficulties, how persistent are they throughout childhood in different situations, and how much of a problem do they cause in your life? And that's really where ADHD, the diagnosis, comes in.
Now, you just don't get this as an adult. If you have it as an adult, that means that you had it when you were a child and you just were never treated for it?
Exactly. I mean, you may not have been treated as a child or an adolescent, but you had the symptoms, you just managed to somehow compensate for them. When adults discover their ADD when they've never been diagnosed before, they've usually had a lot of skills, they've had a lot of ability to get through school, or they just kind of slid by and nobody saw it, which is actually probably more common.
Well, people my age say, well, this is nothing more than what a spanking could cure attention deficit disorder. As a kid, you just spank them and make them do right, and that's all the treatment you need.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No. If you got ADD...
Because why didn't we hear about this back in the 50s and 60s when I was growing up?
Well, I think we didn't know about it then. I mean, we knew in the 60s about kids who were very hyperactive and impulsive, and we could identify them in classrooms. Most kids who actually get diagnosed now, the trend is for kids who are getting diagnosed with the predominantly inattentive type of ADD, which means their problem and their struggle is a silent one. They're not bouncing off the walls or necessarily even getting in a whole lot of trouble. I mean, it isn't as if discipline isn't good for everybody. Structure, discipline, limits being set. I mean, those are important things. But it isn't as simple when you have ADHD as just getting the right kind of discipline. I mean, even if you're hyperactive and impulsive, it isn't just about that. There is a very clear-cut set of criteria that's used to make the diagnosis. There's a lot of data now. I mean, a lot of research has been done in this area. We're not shooting in the dark anymore. We have a lot of information. We have a lot of data about what separates people who have ADHD from people who don't.
Now, what about the people, the young adults, say, anywhere from 18 to 25 that are out here shooting people, getting in trouble? Are they suffering from ADHD? Did they slide through the cracks? Or were they the ones that were treated and now it's just exploding on them? They're not taking the medication anymore and they're going crazy. Well, are those the people that are out there causing all the havoc?
There's a higher percentage of people who get in trouble with the law that have ADHD than in the general population.
Okay.
I have a colleague who's in Colorado, his name is Dwayne McCallum, and he started about 15 years ago as a family practice doc working in a juvenile prison setting. These are severely conduct disordered, severely troubled kids, mostly gang related. He started to recognize and taking the histories, a lot of these kids had ADHD. He pulled out between a third and a half of the kids incarcerated in this really intensive incarceration, this juvenile detention center. And he started treating them. He started treating them with medication. He started treating them with group therapy. Even though a lot of these kids didn't have families, so he couldn't do a lot of family intervention. The recidivism rate for this group of kids went from about 90% to about 20%
Really?
over about a 3-year period.
Just because they were treated?
They were treated, the kids who had ADHD, and there were a lot of them. More than half in this population were treated for ADHD, which is a high percentage. But he found a lot of success treating them with medication and with group therapy to deal with the problems and recognizing what ADHD had done to their lives.
Wow, maybe we need to hire you to go into the Hamilton County justice system and treat some of these guys that are in jail. Get them out of jail. We won't need a new jail.
We'd be delighted
We
at the
could save
Affinity.
some tax dollars just by
Absolutely.
hiring you. Let's take a break. Do we need to take a break? Let's take a break now. Then we'll come back and go to the telephones. The phone number, 513-381-3838. We'll give you some free psychology today. Just grab back on your couch and we'll treat you today for ADHD. We'll take a break and come right back after these messages. We're back live. Lincoln Ware Live is the program. Dr. Doug Pentz is my guest this morning. We're talking about adult attention deficit disorder. If you think you're suffering from it, give us a call. If you know someone who might be suffering from it, give us a call, and maybe we can give you some good information this morning. The phone number, 513-381-3838. Coming up on the second half of the show, Christopher Smitherman, president of the NAACP. We'll talk to him about some upcoming events with the NAACP. Talk to him about LaVon Smith, who was released from jail on Thursday. She had been held in jail for something like 14 days because they found a dead pit bull in her yard. I don't know if that warrants being in jail for 14 days, but we'll talk about that. Talk about some of the comments from the judge and some other things coming up with Christopher Smitherman on the second half of the show, so you don't want to go anywhere. Stick around with us. But if you want to talk to the doctor, 513-381-3838. Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Trina. Trina, good morning. You're talking to Dr. Doug Pentz.
Good morning, Lincoln.
How you doing?
Good morning, Dr. Pentz.
Good morning, Trina.
I am 50 years old. I have went through numerous of jobs, hundreds. I have a son in his 20s, and I stumbled across the book at Barnes & Noble, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And the author noted that there are supplements out there for ADD, which I have in the 10th degree. Now, I went to the supplement and tried it, and in the last 5 years, it has done wonders for me. What is your take on supplements for ADD?
Well, you know, I use them myself. A lot of our clients use them as well. There is no good data about which supplements tend to work the best. Supplements have some controversy here. Every year or two, there's a new one that comes out, and everybody's very high on it. It seems to have some positive impact. I do think that taking fish oil, a lot of our clients do that and find some benefit from that. There have been phases of these supplements that have kind of gone out of style in large measure. I don't think you get as much impact from supplements even when they work for you individually, and something like fish oil and those supplement packages that are often sold for attention, frankly, they often have caffeine or ephedrine. They're just a stimulant, usually a poorer grade of stimulant than the ones that are pharmaceutically prepared like you get from your doctor. But supplements can be a very important health benefit in other ways, and so if the supplements are helping you, great, stick with it. I don't think they're a cure, nor is medication for that matter, nor are they as powerful as medications can be, but they can be a safe and effective help for lots of other reasons. And you know, I take fish oil myself, as I said.
So what do you
I find it
take,
beneficial.
Trina?
I take L-Tarzine, 500 milligrams, 5 times a day.
It sounds like a lot. Is that?
I don't know if that's a lot or not. I don't. And you know, I always say that when you're trying something, as long as there isn't anything that suggests that it can do you harm, and I check in, and I suggest everybody check into that. You know, whether it's looking on the internet or talking to the manufacturer about do they interact with other medications. But if it's helpful to you, great.
Now you said, go ahead.
I think there are other things that are very helpful in addition to medication, though, so I want to make that clear. Things like exercise and a healthy diet. And supplements can be a part of an overall healthy lifestyle that can really make a big difference for people with ADD, adults or kids.
You say you had a lot of jobs, gone through a lot of jobs. What was happening on your jobs that you had to keep changing jobs?
I couldn't concentrate. I would lose focus. You know, just drift off into a daydreaming mode. Basically, people who have ADD have a problem with time, always late. Even if it was no more than 3 or 5 minutes late, I was always late.
Oh, boy, my wife may have that. I better check into that. My wife could have that. She's always late.
Yeah, organization was a mess.
Yeah.
Could never organize anything. And when you see children with their rooms in chaos like that, usually that's a sign of some type of attention deficit disorder. Would you not agree?
Is that true?
I do. Well, all kids may have this to one degree or another, but yes, it is a sign. And all the things you just listed in your life are really classic problems associated with ADHD. I mean, I think the frequent job changes, by the way, are much more likely for people with ADHD. Oh. I mean, by a factor of 5. You have generally 5 times as many job changes as people who don't get diagnosed with ADHD, and often for the same reasons that you're alluding to right now. And being disorganized, having a messy room, having trouble with distractibility, just the inability to focus, and especially time management. There are some theories that understanding, appreciating, and managing time may be the critical symptom for a lot of people with ADHD. You're not alone in that.
And my last comment, Doctor, would you not agree that most people with these disabilities, ADD and ADHD, have some form of giftedness? Would you not agree?
I do agree that most people with ADHD have a lot of hidden talents that are buried under years of failure in school, sometimes failure in the job. And I do have a belief that part of what makes ADHD also a positive benefit is the ability, my best definition of ADHD, by the way, is that it's not that you have trouble paying attention, but you pay attention to everything. That can also be the heart of creativity, being able to pay attention to everything going on around you, interested in wanting to learn about different things, and being interested in fact, trying new things. And entrepreneurs are often ADHD, I've found in my experience. They have a lot of courage and a lot of gifts, and they want to bring them to the workplace or a business and whatever. I think creativity is the hallmark for a lot of people with ADHD, but it is often really subordinated to the problems attached to it, and that's what you tend to see and feel the most, which
All right,
is
Trina.
unfortunate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your call. 513-381-3838, that's the number here. Dr. Doug Pentz. Now, how do you test a person, a child or an adult, to find out if they have this? What type of test do you have to go through?
There isn't a single test or a series of tests really that define the disorder or the results are clearly indicating that you have ADD. Testing is very helpful, though. It's very helpful to determine the kind of attention problems you have and where they're most likely to find themselves, whether it's visual information or whether it's information you hear or it's related to language processing, things you read, as opposed to just things that you may have trouble focusing on in a room full of people or one-to-one. And so testing can help rule out other problems, other kinds of learning problems that sometimes get mistaken for having ADD. Dyslexia sometimes is a cause of a reading problem and not really ADD. So you want to really look, testing can really help with that. It also helps, at our center, at the Affinity Center where I work, the goal of a lot of testing is to have some data that we can use so when people are getting better, that we can tell from some of the changes in the test data. The attention measures are improving as well. I'm sorry. And so we want to be able to have some information that we can use more objectively. But the diagnosis is really made by somebody with a lot of experience in diagnosing ADD and other conditions, because you want to look at other problems, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, problems in the environment that may contribute. And that you do clinically. You do that by getting a good history, talking to somebody, and knowing a lot about what ADHD looks like across the lifespan.
Now, tell me this. Is there, by percentages, do you get more African Americans suffering from this than the white population on a percentage basis?
On a percentage basis, it's the same. Anywhere from 5 to 9% of the population could be diagnosed with ADHD at any given time. That's a large percentage. African American populations are about the same. The difference is that African American populations tend to be treated less than non-African American. In fact, most minority groups are not engaged in treatment at nearly the level that white populations are.
But you hear from a lot of parents at school, if the kid is acting up, that's the first thing they do. Put this kid on some medicine. He's ADHD, and so you're saying, but African Americans suffer from it, but are not being treated for it.
Well, I think they're not being treated for it, and I think sometimes that's sometimes that's true and not true, that somebody might have ADHD who's engaging in a lot of behavior problems. I think just putting people on medication, though, is not usually the answer. In fact, I would say it's rarely the answer that just medication is going to do it. A combination of medicine and therapy and other services, looking at lifestyle changes, dealing with stresses in the home and so on, are a big part of that. I do feel like it's used too often, I think, sometimes as just a label to apply, well, that's the reason. Well, if that may be the reason, and it may be important to treat it.
All right, let's go to Dave. Dave, good morning. How are you?
Morning. I was wondering, I've been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and bipolar. And what do you do when you have both of them at the same time? And what kind of medications is best for that?
You can have both conditions at the same time. I think it's often important to be sure that the diagnosis is correct. A lot of people with ADHD have mood difficulties related to having the ADHD, the frustrations, and even the depressions and the changes in just their emotional state can be directly related to having ADHD. But people also can have bipolar and mood disorders attached to it, and you treat both. I mean, it's often been considered among the professional community that, well, if you've got a mood disorder, if you've got bipolar, you treat that. The attention problems are really just secondary to that. Well, what we often find is that if you treat the mood problems with medications, lithium and other mood stabilizing drugs, for example, including, well, there's a variety of medications that are used by our physicians to treat it. You then, once you have mood stabilized, you do want to address the attention problems, and it's still...
I take Geodon for that.
Yeah, and Geodon is one of those, what they call atypical antipsychotic medicines used for stabilizing mood.
Now, suffering from what Dave is suffering from, untreated, could Dave be a walking time bomb?
I wouldn't say Dave
No,
is...
I wouldn't say that because I'm pretty mellow person.
Okay,
I wouldn't say that either, Dave.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thanks for your call, Dave. We had to throw that in there. Tara, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
I have a question. Really, I didn't become aware of ADD or ADHD until the early 90s. And to sound quite racist, the first person I heard about it was a white female I was working with. And I was thinking then, isn't that something? We find diagnoses for white kids to say they have a problem. And in history, we've just labeled black children as stupid and inability to learn anything. But my question becomes, why is there such a difficulty in getting adults diagnosed with ADD or ADHD? It's like doctors don't want to recognize the fact that now with the research they're saying that this is a genetic predisposition.
You're absolutely correct. It is a genetic predisposition. The history is, you're absolutely right. It was until about the early 90s that adults could reasonably expect they might be able to find a good way to get evaluated and treated for this. The history is, by the way, that because most kids tend to outgrow hyperactivity or impulsivity at around 12 or 13, when they reach adolescence, they're still suffering from the attention problems. That's why they still struggle in school. And they often are misinterpreted for that struggle. And by the way, I agree with you. I think a lot of kids in the inner city school systems and a lot of kids, and there may be more African American kids who are assumed to either have a behavior problem from some other reason than ADHD. They may be, like a lot of kids, just kind of written off, black and white. But I think that the reason why it took so long is because I think people have had a harder time, even with the research available, believing that this is a real condition. We now have, MRIs and brain imaging to show the brain activity of people with ADHD are different in adulthood and childhood, and that when they're on medication, they look more like people who don't have ADHD. And the research data is really very convincing right now, and there's no way to argue, I think, against the research that suggests it's a real disorder at this point.
Carol, thanks for your call.
Oh, one more.
Go ahead.
Is there anywhere that you can suggest an adult to go to? Because sometimes I think that if mama believed that she had it and passed it on, there would be less reluctance to treat the child.
Well, I think that it's hard for adults to find treatment. I do. I mean, the Affinity Center where I work, we treat, half the folks we treat are adults. There are some doctors, and especially psychologists and other therapists, who are well versed in evaluating and treating adult ADD. We specialize in it, but there are a lot of people in the last decade who have learned more about this. I think when you're looking for a healthcare provider or a therapist who you want to ask them, what's your experience with it? Do you believe that adults can get it? Have you worked with many? And really be a good, a smart consumer about it. You really want to talk to people who have had experience with this, who believe it's true, who have had some success with treating it as well, and you can ask them about that directly. So I think there's a lot that you can do for this. It's still, even since the early 90s, progress, I think, has been much too slow. There are a lot of people who are still skeptical, even among my colleagues. I don't understand that given the research available, but it's true. You have to shop and you have to be aggressive.
Hey, thanks for your call.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We had the number of the Affinity Center up on the screen there, and people can call you.
Sure.
They can make an appointment. Now, you take the health care. I mean,
Well, a
how
lot
does
of
that
people
work?
who have health insurance do come to us, but we don't take health insurance directly.
Okay.
And a lot of centers, we're actually one of the largest treatment centers of its
Okay.
kind in the country.
Okay.
Treatment centers that rely on insurance reimbursement have had a really tough time. And so a lot of our folks have insurance that helps them come to our center, but most people have to pay out of pocket to get there, or at least some portion of it.
Okay.
Health insurance is, unfortunately, that's a whole other problem.
Yeah.
Is really not been quick to help treating with ADHD. So that's why one of the things that consumers have to look for is, can they find somebody, if their insurance does provide some professional services, can that be done with somebody who has ADD experience and still use your insurance? We're not on insurance panels. You can't treat it the way insurance usually defines the treatment for it, unfortunately. I think there are people who do accept insurance who do a pretty good job, even if it's not a comprehensive job like we do, and I think, again, you have to search.
All right, we've got time for maybe one or two more quick calls, so keep the questions down to a minimum. Cheryl, how you doing?
I'm fine, Lincoln. How are you this morning?
Pretty good.
I have a question. I mean, I deal with a lot of children. I have a lot of children of my own. And I've noticed as these kids growing up, instead of the mother making this child behave, they take them to the doctor, claim they have ADHD, put them on some medicine, and get a monthly check for it.
Now, see, I was just asking him about that earlier, and he said he really didn't know a whole lot of, you hadn't heard about that.
Well,
No, I've heard the people.
You've heard that people do that, but you don't know how true it is.
Well, no, I think that does happen. That does happen. There are people who just don't have time or whatever, that may not be capable, may not have the skills really and then they go to the doc and say, well, I can't control them. But usually a good behavioral intervention will help with that, helping parents learn how to set
when we were
limits.
growing up, you behaved or you got chastised by your parents. These parents don't want to take care of their kids, or the law says you can't whoop your kids, so in order to make it behave, I'm going to get it all drugged out. Now do what I tell you to, little Bobby. And that's what happens, and I get a monthly check for you.
Well,
I don't have to deal with you because you're ADHD.
well, you don't. I don't know of anybody that gets a monthly check for people who are just taking medication.
I could give you a big list.
Well, you can't. There is, I suppose, you can try to apply for disability based on ADHD, although it's very hard to do, and you have to have other impairments to do that. But I know your feeling about this. I don't agree with it. I think a lot of people with ADHD really have a condition, and if people don't, it's fairly easy to
I understand that you have a condition, but shouldn't it be to where maybe you would have to be old enough to know the difference between right and wrong, or your parents should have to go to some sort of class to make you learn how to behave? My brother was one of the worst kids in the world.
Well,
we grew up in the 60s.
Yeah, well,
you know what? My mom made him behave.
They just whooped his rear end, huh?
Yes.
And that cured the ADHD. Thanks for your call. You want to comment on what she said?
Well, I would say that it wouldn't have cured the ADHD. Doesn't mean, you have to have limits and you have to have consequences. And parents do need help learning this sometimes.
Yeah.
And you just can't go to the doctor to get medication. But to be honest with you, kids like she's talking about, if they just get on medicine, they're not going to change their behavior a whole lot if the environment hasn't changed.
All right, one final call here. Let's go to Bernadette. Bernadette, please, no sermons. I know it's Sunday morning. No sermons, please. Hello.
Lincoln?
Yes, Bernadette.
Hey, good morning. I'm not going to give you a sermon, but I'm going to just say this. We don't need medicine for it. If you come out of that Mosaic covenant, we'll be healed. But we are suffering from unmanageability. It's really like a brain meltdown because there's a substantial amount of information on the brain, and it's too much information at this time because we don't understand the sign of the times. And remember, they wanted to bring forth a prison planet. And in order to make God provide a social service program, then there had to be a meltdown of knowledge.
Okay, you're starting to preach. Comment on what she just said.
I know that man know I'm not lying.
Well, he agreed with you, I think.
No, I was not in my head. I think we are too. I think we are as a culture overwhelmed. I think we have too much going on. We spend too much of our time in front of TV sets and getting overwhelmed with information and things we have to do. I think but that isn't the cause of people who really do genuinely get diagnosed with ADHD and need the treatment for it. But we're all suffering, including them, from a culture that's really too fast, too much. And
It's a mingling of nations.
Hey, Bernadette, thanks for the
It's a mingling of nations, Link.
thanks for the brief sermon this morning. How did you ever start working at your new job?
And I'm going to tell you about it because the Mexicans can have it. But anyway, we'll talk.
Call me back Monday on the radio show.
I will.
Okay. All right. Hey, Dr. Pentz, it's been great having you
It's
here.
my pleasure.
One question before we go.
Yeah.
One quick question. Can you forget about your baby for 8 hours after you leave the baby? Is it some type of psychological brain meltdown that would have you forget you left your child in the car for 8 hours?
you know, it's a very extreme situation. But the short answer to that is yes. And that I know that a lot of people can't believe that, but I think a lot of us have the capability to be forgetful even under the most severe circumstances. Obviously, this tragic is as severe as it gets. But yes.
You can do that.
Sure.
And you think that's what happened there?
I don't know.
Okay.
But,
all right.
and my guess is yes. I have a lot of, I feel it's a great tragedy and feel really sorry for this woman. It's a horrible thing that happened.
Dr. Doug Pentz, always good to talk to you. Thanks
Good
for
to talk to
stopping
you,
by.
Lincoln. Great to be here.
All right, we'll take a quick break and come back and talk to Christopher Smitherman, president of the NAACP. We'll take a quick break and come back. You can call up right now, 513-381-3838. That's the number if you want to jump on board and talk to Chris. We'll be back in a moment. Tell a friend. And my guest this morning, Christopher Smitherman, president of the local branch of the NAACP. And Chris, you've been on TV more this week than, like I said before, the three past presidents were on the entire time they were president. So that means that
Thanks
the
for having me
NAACP is active now. I
We
mean,
are.
you guys are out there, out front, working to help people with problems, issues when there's seem like some discrimination going on. You guys are right there. The past week, LaVon Smith held in jail for 14 days or more because of a dead pit bull.
Yes.
Let's just bring people up to date on that case in case they don't know about it. But LaVon Smith.
Mr. LaVon Smith went before Judge Heather Russell, who is a Republican judge. The judge, it was very interesting as I sat in the courtroom. A lot of people don't realize that a courtroom is a public place. So they're able to go and listen to cases. But Judge Russell said that she had held her for 16 days because she needed to do an autopsy on the dog in order to determine whether the dog had dog bites. That she was concerned about the health of all of Lincoln Heights is one of the things she said, because there were maggots on the dog. But she went into this grand explanation. But what was interesting about the case, and even the paper of record, they have been misrepresenting the facts over the last 2 days, is that Miss Smith was never sentenced. Our issue is that she was not given a bond.
Right.
So it was a bench trial. That means in front of the judge found her guilty, did not give her a bond, and she sat in jail from around the 22nd of August until September the 6th. And we just thought that was absolutely outrageous. She was never sentenced. And even on the day of her sentencing, the judge released her immediately and did not even have her pay restitution.
Right. And the thing about it, she brought up Michael Vick in all of this. So do you think maybe the Michael Vick case had something to do with the unusual jail time that this woman received?
There's no question. I mean, the judge is right now running for elected office in District 5, and we did not raise Michael Vick. Be clear, the judge from the bench raised Michael Vick, which we found very interesting. We are just very, very concerned that African Americans are over-prosecuted. that they are overpunished in Hamilton County's criminal justice system, and one of the many reasons we don't support the jail. We believe if we relieve the jail from some of this institutional racism, sincerely, Lincoln, that we could free up quite a few beds down in Hamilton County.
But on the other hand, with the treatment and intervention they claim will come with the new jail, just like Dr. Pentz, who was here, if they did some type of intervention like that, maybe some of the problems out there, some of these people are suffering from ADHD that are committing some of the crimes. If they get treatment and they put back out on the street, you heard about the study that he said that was done, maybe it could help solve some problems. You know, the treatment part of this whole jail tax might be the answer to our problems. What do you think?
Well, the second issue, Lincoln, is it's a regressive tax. That means it's a sales tax. It's not a property tax. It means that the wealthy people are paying the same tax as poor people. That's what makes it regressive. But a lot of times the politicians are trying to frame this as if it is a prison. It's not a prison, it's a jail. Most people are in jail 1 or 2 or 16 days. Let's look at Miss LaVon Smith. How could David rehabilitate anyone in 16 days? The case will be back in court on Monday before Judge Ted Berry.
Which case is this?
This is another case. It's Miss Lauren Casey, and this is a child endangerment case. The police were called to her home. Her 6-year-old was asleep in the bed. A single mother had gone around the corner to get some medicine for her baby, and she had her baby with her. Someone in the complex called the police. 7 officers responded. The TV stations responded.
Yeah.
They went in.
That was the Fay Apartments, right?
I don't think this was Fay Apartments.
Okay.
They went in. They arrested her. They took her to jail. They took her kids away from her. Now, Judge Berry has not heard this. He has not weighed on it. Judge Allen has, and she let her out on her own recognizance.
This is Nadine Allen?
Judge Nadine Allen,
okay.
which we believe she's a fair judge. She let her out on her own recognizance.
Okay.
But she comes back before Berry for a bench trial. Now, what's interesting is that Attorney Cohen, who is running against Heather Russell, is the attorney in this case.
Whoa.
Representing Miss Casey as it relates to her child endangerment case. What we want from the judge is we want the punishment to fit the crime. We want the young woman to be immediately reunited with her children. All of this stuff just can't become criminal.
Right.
No one is dead in this case.
Right.
There's no prior on her with child endangerment cases, so we just don't quite understand it.
All right, let's go to the telephones. I'm having a tough time hearing what they're telling me here. I did hear the name Erica. Erica, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. What's on your mind?
Yes, I would like to know, with all the things in the media as far as, this lady and her pit bulls and Michael Vick, and then you have the lady from the Fay Apartments who was arrested and had her kids taken away from her. It's just very interesting that happened with them. And the woman who is the assistant principal of the school that left her 2-year-old in the car and the 2-year-old passed away was not charged at all.
Yes.
And I have an issue with that. I don't understand. I mean, even if she wasn't charged for some form of manslaughter or murder or whatever the case, she has been known to have left her child in the car several times prior to that, and she wasn't even charged with negligence. And I personally know of a situation where a mother had left her kids in the car and went to play bingo. Her face was plastered over the news. Her children were taken away from her. None of the children had died. And while I understand the situation was extreme, still it wasn't extreme to the point where a child had passed away. And so, what, if anything, is trying to be done about getting this lady charged or figuring if something, can be done about it?
Well, what I think, Erica, because this story has now made national news, that there's going to be a lot of pressure on the prosecutor to make a different decision. Right now, on the front page of the paper, he's saying no apologies for anything.
And I talked to Joe Dieters about this, and Joe Dieters is saying that it's really no crime has been committed as far as state law goes.
This is absolutely this is outrageous, and the NAACP and the African American community knows well that if this was an African American woman, she would be in jail.
Yeah, no doubt.
And the second piece of it is she would not have her 5-year-old child, who is alive, with her now.
You're right.
Okay,
you're right.
so already there would be an intervention.
Right.
Let's say that, as the psychologist said before, somebody with ADD, you certainly would not trust her with the second child after being warned by the daycare centers, hey, you keep leaving your children in the car. So this is a very bizarre case.
But the white community has a hard time when you say that if this was an African-American woman, she'd be in jail. They just have a hard time comprehending that. We've seen it, but they can't just grasp this for some reason. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. Well, Joe Dieter's office right now, we have the woman I thought it was in Avondale, who left her children in a closet, Lincoln, and went to work. That's absolutely wrong, right? But you have the prosecutor saying he's going after 100 years for her. She's in jail right now, right? She's in jail.
Both her kids are alive.
Both her kids are alive, and Hamilton County is going after her for 100 years.
I forgot to mention that to Joe Dieters. I'll do that next time I talk to him. Let's go to Ray. Ray, good morning. How are you? Ray.
Hello?
Yes.
This is not Ray.
Okay. What's your name?
Lori.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my question was, I was listening to him about the extreme way blacks are prosecuted and sentenced in Hamilton County, but it seems to me that it's a trend, and I just want to know, nationwide trend, is there an address or addresses and emails for congressmen and senators that we could contact about the Gen 6? Because it seems that the trend is to give young black men felony records so that they can't attend colleges, good colleges, but their white counterparts are tried as juveniles because of how extreme their case is, like the boy that killed the 2 girls in his car a few months ago. They made sure that his case stayed in juvenile court so that it wouldn't affect his chances of getting into a good college.
The caller raises, again, a great issue, and this is where I think the white community and the African-American community, where we end up being divided on these issues based on race. We see the young man in Hyde Park last year who killed his brother with a baseball bat. And after killing his brother with the baseball bat, he then went to the Hyde Park fountain and bathed in the fountain. That young man isn't in jail, and the caller just raised the juvenile, the whole outcry to have him tried as a juvenile. We constantly see our young people tried as adults. This is a major issue, and we're going to continue to hold Hamilton County accountable as they talk about expanding the jail, more bed space with a regressive tax. How can they expect the NAACP to come out and endorse a jail at the same time we're looking at a criminal justice system that just simply is so obviously broken?
Now, tell me this. In the case of LaVon Smith, you saw the turnout at the courthouse. You heard people on talk radio all week long prior to the sentencing. Do you think that made a difference in LaVon Smith being released from jail without bond or anything? Do you think the support that was shown to her made a difference?
There's no question. I think that made a difference, Lincoln. I think showing up and being present in the court and all of the explanation that I saw the judge feel like she had to give prior to releasing her was an indication that she understood that we were very, very serious. So it's important to, again, on Monday at 9 o'clock, we will be in Ted Berry's court, again looking at another child endangerment case, and we encourage the community to show up and participate in the criminal justice system. That's how we make it right.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll come back. Christopher Smitherman, my guest, president of the local branch of the NAACP. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk to you, 513-381-3838. Back in a moment. We're back live, Lincoln Ware Live, the program. Christopher Smitherman, president of the local branch of the NAACP, my guest this morning. And we'll try to get to as many calls as we can, so let's get busy right now. Let's go to Nicole. Nicole, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Lincoln?
Pretty good. What's on your mind?
I have a question for Mr. Smitherman. I know that a lot of people, especially African Americans, including myself, feel that race played a role in the case with the lady leaving her baby in the car and the baby died. I was listening to Nathan Ivey earlier, and he was saying that he also feels that class and like her status in her community had a lot to do with them not filing any charges. Do you believe that that has anything to do with it? Like if it was the same lady and maybe she was in a different type of profession, that maybe she would have been charged? And then also, if that same lady with her same status of what it is now was living in Hamilton County and got charged, do you think the outcome would be the same?
All right, thanks for your call.
Class plays a very big role in the criminal justice system. I mean, the woman had a Mercedes-Benz.
She was able to hire a lawyer, not a public defender. I mean, of course, she never did go to trial, but the case of LaVon Smith, her first lawyer was a public defender. Now, to me, if he had told the judge the information that the regular lawyer, about her job,
right,
and the twin, she's got two twin boys,
that's right,
boys or girls. If she had told the judge that, maybe the judge would have said, okay, you got two-year-old boys, maybe we will let you put you on home incarceration or something. But that public defender never brought this to the judge. So,
well, having money is critical, and I think that's really, class plays a big role in it. And I also believe, is the woman's name Erica?
Nicole.
Nicole, I also believe that if this had happened in Hamilton County, the outcome would have been the same. There are major structural issues. We've never had an African-American juvenile judge in the history of Hamilton County. How do we have a criminal justice system and me be able to say that factually, that there are two judges in the juvenile court and none of them have ever been African-American? I mean, and when we look at the first appellate court, we've never had an African-American serve on our first appellate court. Now, Mary Ann Bettman hired a clerk who was African-American, but we've never had a judge. And when Judge West was in a position to be on the first appellate court, they stepped over him, and they appointed Penelope Cunningham, and they also appointed Joe Dieter's mother-in-law. These are tough things that we have to address. As they say, don't get mad at me as the messenger delivering factual information. I've never been sued from anyone saying that I have provided false information. So the point is that I'm giving factual information. So what I'm looking for are reasonable white citizens to say, is what he's saying true? And if it's true, are we interested in fixing it?
All right, let's move along. Let's go to Melody. Melody, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Great, great. I wanted to touch on 2 quick points. The first one was, both my husband and I, we have SUVs with the hatchback, and we tried a little experiment. There's no way we didn't see our 2-year-old.
You all did an experiment. I love it.
Okay, but did you have a Mercedes SUV? Maybe the seats in the Mercedes are a little higher, and you couldn't see the baby's head.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it's some sort of expensive, screen right there that we just didn't have in ours.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I agree with you. I just find it hard to believe that she could not have seen that baby even after she opened that hatchback.
You go back for donuts and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's right.
The reason with that, like I said, the coroner may not have found anything because if you're not looking for specific things, you're not going to look for them in the autopsy.
True.
He pretty much had his mind set on what exactly killed the baby, and maybe that's...
They pretty say it was heat, so that's what they looked for, and they didn't look any further than that. You might have a point there.
How then do we address the fact that the prosecutor never raised the issue that she had been cited from the daycare, having done this in the past on 2 different occasions. That to me moves into this was intentional or it was negligent.
The media,
I don't know how they run away from that fact.
The media is investigating this case more so than the prosecutor
No
is
question.
investigating.
No question.
You know, we found a lot of this stuff out from the media.
Big on that, the accident. They're very good on trying to call it an accident and things of that nature, but kind of tying into the whole thing. I think the jail should be built just not on taxpayers' dime. At least not the way that they're trying to build it. And the thing that I need to tell every black person out there, we are not playing on a level playing field. We are not. We're not. I'll recognize that and I'll admit that we're not playing on an equal playing field. So what you guys need to do is kind of, recognize that and not fall into certain traps and then cry when you don't get equal and fair treatment. If you know that equal and fair treatment is not out there for us, why would you do certain things and then expect, the treatment that you know is not out there?
Now, Melanie, did you and your husband try the experiment where you were backing the car up? And
we had our cars back to back. His car is a little bit larger than mine, and we tried it. There is no way. And my 2-year-old sleep in a car for more than 3 hours, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that what parent, I have 4 children, what parent doesn't go through the day
without thinking of their kids?
Without thinking
well,
of their
and
children.
I talked to the psychologist, Dr. Doug Pentz. He said it's possible to do that. That's what he told me before the show.
It's possible to do that.
It's
okay,
possible.
I don't know of a parent yet, and trust me, my life is stressed. There's not that much stress in my life where I forget about my children.
Hey, thanks for your call.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
And Lincoln, they also, I don't think, can run away from the fact that they still are allowing her to have the 5-year-old.
Yeah.
See, so now how do they now justify saying you can have your 5-year-old child? With African American women that I see, and I just speak straight to it, they take the children away, 241 kids, we're in jail, we're arrested, and we're back in front of a jail on home arrest, or we're sitting in jail until we have a trial. That's our issue.
All right, Alfonso, how you doing today?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
This is Alan.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Alan. You're right.
Okay, what happened is I was a victim of Hamilton County, the prosecution, the judges, and the public defender's office. I was held 157 days on a charge of grand theft auto, but at the time I was hospitalized, and the crime happened at 4:45. But I had doctor's statements stating that I was watching TV at 4:30, and the crime happened in Price Hill, but yet I'm in Coreyville. And I had doctors that can testify, but yet the judge refused to let me out of jail. The prosecutor, with all that information, refused to drop the charges. My public defender, he kept telling me to plead guilty to these charges, even with all the information.
Well, it makes their job a lot easier when you just plead guilty.
They already had me plead guilty to misdemeanor. They dropped it from a felony to a misdemeanor because Judge Steve Martin wanted the case over with.
Yes.
And I felt that was wrong.
Well, there's no question that we are not playing on an equal field, and that's why the NAACP, we feel like we need to engage this process a lot more aggressively, and we're going to continue to do that.
Hey, thanks for your call.
Thank you.
Now, do you have an attorney that sort of works pro bono for the NAACP that can look into some of these allegations?
Robert Richardson Jr. is an attorney, and he's the chair of our legal redress committee for the NAACP. Okay. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay. Is this all right. I guess can we have time for one more call? Okay, let's go to, I think this is Alfonso. Alfonso.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing, man?
Pretty good.
My question is, what to respond to how do we address these issues? How aggressive do we have to be in order to, be heard?
All right, thanks. That's a good question.
It's an incremental game for me, meaning we start identifying cases that are obviously problems, and we engage them. That's what we did last week. That's what we're going to do next week. And we're going to continue to identify these cases. The woman who left her children in the closet, even though we feel that that is wrong, we don't believe that someone should be pursuing a 100-year sentence for her. So that's what we'll be addressing in those cases. Lincoln, may I just state before, just want to make sure we don't run out of time, that we have a Freedom Fund dinner that is coming up on October the 5th. And it's very important that the community come out and support the Freedom Fund dinner. The tickets are $75. They can call our office at 281-1900 or come by our Reading Road office at 4439 Reading Road to purchase tickets. Chairman John Conyers is our keynote speaker, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee for the United States of America.
He'll be the keynote speaker.
He'll be the keynote speaker. So I hope people will come out and support our organization, which allows us to continue to do this kind of work.
All right, Chris Smitherman, good having you here.
Thank you very
We'll have
much.
to
I
have you back
appreciate it.
again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lincoln Ware, for the time.
Let's take a break and we'll come back and wrap things up right here on Lincoln Ware Live. We'll be back in a moment. And we're back for the Talk of the Town. Coming up at noon today, Evil Remains, Daniel Gillies and Estella Warren. Tonight, 8 o'clock, a rebroadcast of this show on Channel 25. And following at 9, Bullfighter. Willem Delfo will be the star on that movie. But make sure you tune in next Sunday morning at 10 o'clock to join us right here on Lincoln Ware Live. I'm on 1230 The Buzz, Monday through Friday from 10 till 1. And that's going to just about wrap it up for today. We'll see you next Sunday morning right here on Lincoln Ware Live.
Independent television station. It's Cincinnati 38.